Hi, friends. Thanks for joining me today. Well, as you know, my daughter and I went to visit Charleston, South Carolina, and we took the train. So I wanted to share with you some photographs that I took of the train station in Orlando, and that's what you're looking at now. And it is a historic landmark. And I just wanted to show you some of the woodwork in this train station. It is absolutely stunning. Here I was trying to give you a little visual of inside of the train. You can see it looks similar to an airplane. I don't know if you've ever been on a train, but they're much more roomy than a bus or an airplane, and I found it to be very relaxing to take the train. Coming up is a clip of two young men. They are making a video. I'm sure they are YouTubers, and I just thought they were so adorable. On the way to South Carolina, Amanda and I took coach seats, and then on the way home, we actually got a sleeper, and I'm really glad that we did that for on the way home. But coming up, you will see us at our hotel. We stayed at the Cambria Hotel, and it's Charleston Riverview, and this particular one was on Ripley Point Drive. We really enjoyed our stay there. As you can see, the lobby is beautiful, and also our room was fantastic. Everything was very clean. So yeah, all good things to say about the hotel, and even the service and the people working there were very kind. Here is a view of our room, and hang on just a second and I will show you outside by the pool. They had several fires going, which I thought was really nice. We ended up taking an Uber everywhere we went while we were in Charleston, and that ended up working out really great for us. We didn't have to worry about a rental car or anything like that. When we got into town, we just ended up walking everywhere. And it's a small enough town that you can do that unless you plan on going to one of the outer sites, which we did end up doing, but we were perfectly fine to walk around downtown. So when I saw this store, I said to our Uber driver, "Oh, you have to pull over. I have to get out right now. I have to go inside of this store. It's just beautiful." And here's some pictures. You'll see what I mean.
Show me, Amanda.
So like I mentioned, we spent the first day downtown. As you guys know, I enjoy photography, so this video will have some photography and it will also have some video footage. And when I can, I will share history about certain things that I've captured. Amanda and I spotted Buxton Bookstore, so we thought we would go in, and it is a delightful little bookstore, and they had new and used books, and they had some antique books, which I thought was pretty neat. They had the horse and carriage all over town. You could book a tour on that for about $40, which I don't think is too bad actually. We did not end up doing that though. Amanda and I both have special diets. She is a vegan and I eat gluten-free. So we wanted to make sure we could find a restaurant that served both, and we found Harken Cafe, and I am so glad that we went in there. The food was amazing and very fresh. So that's what you're seeing here. This is actual cobblestone, and when I saw it and walked on it, I really felt sorry for the horses and understand now why horses must wear horseshoes. I'd like you to take note of the brick on this building, and you will see in many of my pictures there are many buildings made with this red brick. And later on in the video, Amanda and I are visiting a plantation, and its main function was to create brick. And so the enslaved people that lived and worked at the plantation created most of the brick that was used to build the city. And we'll get into more of that later on, but I just wanted to point that out ahead of time. Now we are at the Old Exchange, also known as the Provost, and this building has a lot of history, and there's no way that I could get it all into this video. Construction started on this building in 1767. It was meant to be an impressive statement by the British Empire in the colony. Basically, all of the goods that would come into Charleston had to go through this building, and so the merchants would bring in their goods, they'd go through the building, they would get paid, and then they'd go, back out onto sea. During the American Revolution, the building was taken over by British forces, and so they kept prisoners of war in the dungeon of this building. The building also housed the South Carolina Convention to ratify the United States Constitution in 1788. Amanda and I found a cute little coffee shop called Biddy and Boo, and it is run by people with disabilities. And the service and our drinks were fantastic. Amanda and I went into a place that they called the mall, but it was very, very different than what we call a mall here in Florida. And anyway, it was really interesting. It was really beautiful, quite opulent, and really high-end stores. One of the things that I enjoyed about the window shopping downtown was the windowscapes. So you'll notice that I've taken pictures here and there of the ones that really caught my attention. Well, many of you know Gilly, but for those of you who don't, Gilly is the avocado with a hat. We picked him up in a store, and we decided that we would take him with us on the rest of our travels in Charleston, and we would photograph him. So you're going to see pictures of Gilly here and there. If you look at the top center of this building, you will notice the date of 1891 there, and I think that's pretty cool. So day one was a wonderful visit to see downtown, to visit some museums down there. The weather was perfect. As you can see, everything was just beautiful. And then coming up, you'll see day two when we go to visit Boone Hall. The house that you're getting ready to see is not the original plantation home. That home was torn down, and this home was built in 1936. Now this is the back of Boone Hall. Amanda and I, we just started in the back and then wrapped our way around the front. So you'll see the front of it eventually, and the long, beautiful drive where it's lined with live oaks. It's gorgeous. But we started in the back, I think because there was kind of a crowd out in the front, and we just wanted a little bit of space to ourselves. I wanted to capture the architecture. This is the plantation where the red brick was created, and they've done a very good job of preserving this place. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Is I don't want to just talk about the beauty of the main house, because I want to honor and respect the fact that there were slaves living on this plantation. They created these bricks, which then in turn built so much of the city of Charleston. So like I said, I want to honor the enslaved people that were here. And also I want to mention along with that, that not only did the bricks that were made here build much of Charleston, but they also would ship them out. And so they were used in other places in the United States as well. We are getting ready to move to the front of the house, and so coming up are some of the gardens that are out front.
That tree over there has pink and white on the same one.
Oh, it sure does. Look at that. Look at that one right straight ahead. Oh, they're so pretty. We get some close-ups of these blooms over here. Boone Hall was established in 1681. When an Englishman, Major John Boone, came to Charleston. In 1743, one of his sons planted the live oaks that line the very long driveway that goes to and from the house. And live oaks actually grow together, and if one of the oaks is suffering, the other one will help to feed it. And that's why they call them live oaks. On the property, there are 9 original slave cabins, and my daughter and I toured them, and I was really glad that we did. It's a self-guided tour. Each of the cabins has a different presentation. One of them was representation of the living quarters. Some of them hold historic relics. Some show the lifestyle of the slaves that lived at Boone Hall. Others have a history of Boone Hall and other places in Georgia. Another thing that they have is a live presentation of the Gullah culture. It's a unique culture adapted by African slaves. And while we were walking around on the property, I could hear the woman singing, and I really wanted to get over there to see the presentation, but a storm came in and everybody left. So we were not able to see her. There was one lady still there that was kind of packing up her basket weaving stuff, so we didn't get to talk to her either. But we stayed and we toured the cabins, and I'm glad that we did take the time to do that. As mentioned earlier, bricks were one of the things that were made on this plantation. It was also used for farming, but I captured some bricks here that have prints in them. This one's a dog footprint, and this one is the print of a child's hand. And both of these photos I took inside of a slave cabin. In case you're into historical facts, I wanted to mention that the construction of the bricks began in 1811. I wanted to mention that the first slave cabins were most likely made of wood. These brick slave cabins date from between 1790 and 1810. They're approximately 12 feet by 30 feet with gabled roofs. The cabins were used well into the 20th century, and they were occupied by sharecroppers through the 1940s. In 1940, the owners sold the plantation to a Georgian prince, and he raced thoroughbreds. And these are the stables where he kept his horses. Next up, you're going to see the cotton docks. And I wanted to do a little research on whether Boone Hall farmed cotton. And what I found was this. The first crops were indigo and rice, and then they farmed cotton and pecans. As you'll see, this structure is quite large, and it is right on the water. It was used for moving plantation goods on barges to market. This is the Grand Avenue of Oaks, and they were planted in 1743. We are going to have a Reese's snack with Gilly and move on to day 3. On day 3, we went to Middleton Place. Middleton Place is an interesting place because the history is so deep there. And so there's these elaborate, amazing, fascinating gardens. It's also a living history museum, and they have livestock and they grow food, and so that's quite interesting. And then you learn that the main house was burned down by Union troops during the Civil War. There's just an enormous amount of history with this piece of property. And of course, we can't forget or ignore the fact that there were enslaved people on the property as well. It is said that at least 800 slaves were owned by the Middleton family. Let's start out learning a little bit about the gardens. Henry Middleton began creating the gardens in 1741. When created, they used the same design principles that were used at the Palace of Versailles. After the Civil War, the gardens were basically left to ruin, and they were restored in the 1940s. We took our trip the end of December, beginning of January, so there's a lot of green. There are some flowers in bloom, and that's in a whole different section, but I honestly can't imagine how beautiful it is in the springtime. There are 65 acres of gardens, and they are said to be the oldest landscaped gardens in America. It is believed that the first camellias ever brought to this country were brought to Middleton Gardens. Coming up is the Mill House. It was built in 1851. It suffered damage during the Civil War, and it underwent restoration in the 1920s. Now it stores art and artifacts. This is the spring house, and it was built in the 18th century. And in case you didn't know, spring houses were used for refrigeration. The second story of the spring house was converted into a chapel in 1850. Now I want to share with you a little bit more about the history of the original house. Middleton Place is situated on the southwest bank of the Ashley River. It was established in the 1730s by an early South Carolina planter by the name of John Williams. When John Williams died, the plantation became part of the dowry of his daughter Mary Williams, and Mary Williams married Henry Middleton. The original main house was completed around 1741, and it was 3 stories tall, and it was built of brick in the Jacobean style. In 1755, Middleton added 2 two-story freestanding wings, one on the right and one on the left, or as they say, one to the north and one to the south. The freestanding north wing contained a library and ballroom, and the south wing was used as a guest house. In February of 1865, near the end of the Civil War, Union troops captured Middleton Place and burned the main house and the north flanker and part of the south flanker. In 1868, the roof was restored on the south flanker and it was converted to the main residence. Amanda and I did get to tour inside, but we were not able to take pictures or do any recording. Once Amanda and I finished the house tour, we walked around more of the gardens and also down some trails. Middleton Place is located in the Low Country, which is perfect for growing rice, and so it was mainly a rice plantation. Coming up is the Middleton Oak. It is a huge oak tree at Middleton Place, and it is estimated to be almost 1,000 years old. I took a picture of Amanda standing in front of it so that you could see how massive the trunk of the tree is. Coming up are the plantation stable yards. It is set up as a living history museum, and there is a blacksmith shop, a carpentry shop, pottery, textile. We were able to stop and talk to a gentleman who was making handmade barrels. Once we walked through that part of the plantation, we saw the stables, and then just beyond that, we got to see some livestock. The sheep saw the farmhand feeding the cows, and they decided that they were hungry too. Before the Civil War, Henry Middleton owned about 50,000 acres and also about 800 slaves. There's a YouTube video available, and it's called Beyond the Fields. I will try to remember to link that in my description box if you want more information on slavery at Middleton Place. This is called Eliza's house, and it is a freedman's dwelling. It was built in 1870. This house is believed to have been occupied by Ned and Chloe, a freed black married couple who once belonged to the Middletons. During enslavement, Ned was a driver, supervising other enslaved workers in the fields. Unlike many of the enslaved people, Ned and Chloe chose to stay at Middleton Place and work after the Civil War. It's called Eliza's Place because Eliza Leach was the last resident of the house. She died in 1986 at the age of 94. She was born in South Carolina. She worked at Middleton Place for over 40 years. And during those years, she worked in the gardens, and then she later served as a costumed interpreter in the stable yards. On our last day in Charleston, we started out by the water. My entire goal for our last day in Charleston was to get back downtown so that I could get some fresh pralines. I don't know if I told you guys, but on our first day, we were on Market Street and we went to this praline place and they weren't ready. And you can get them like hot, they're still warm. And we would have had to wait like 10-15 minutes. And it was our first day, so we were all excited to walk around, this and that and the other. And we thought we would end up being able to make it back to that store, but we didn't. So I said, I am not leaving this town until we get the fresh pralines. So we found the shop, and as luck would have it, they literally had just come out of the oven. I was so excited and I could not wait to taste them. And can I just tell you that they were so good? They literally brought tears to my eyes. I was thrilled. So I bought a big giant box of them. As you can see, Gilly was quite happy that we found the pralines too. Coming up, you're going to see a plaque or a marker, and it talks about the seizure of the planter. And it says this: early in May 13th, 1862, Robert Small, an enslaved harbor pilot aboard the planter, seized the 149-foot Confederate transport from a wharf just east of here. He and 6 enslaved crewmen took the vessel before dawn when its captain, pilot, and engineer were ashore. Smalls guided the ship through the channel, past Fort Sumter and out to sea, delivering it to the Federal fleet, which was blockading the harbor. Northern and Southern newspapers called this feat bold and daring. Smalls and his crew, a crewman on another ship, and 8 other enslaved persons, including Smalls' wife Hannah and 3 children, won their freedom by it. Smalls, born 1839, died 1915, was appointed captain of the planter by a U.S. Army contract in 1863. A native of Beaufort, he was later a state legislature and then a 5-term U.S. congressman. I just had to share that because I think it's amazing, and I think it's just proof that you never know where your life might go. How much do you love this old-fashioned mailbox? We stopped at Chipotle for lunch, and then Gilly met a friend, a gargoyle. We walked to a lesser populated area so that we could call for our Uber that would take us to the train station. We went from Charleston to Savannah, and this is the Savannah station. I wanted to show you that there's actually an old phone booth in this station. I thought that was awesome, and I hope they keep it there. From Savannah to Tampa, we got a sleeper, so Amanda and I got to lay down and catch some Z's, which was fantastic, and I'm so glad we did that. Amanda was in the top bunk. I'm a local guide on Google Maps, and I did reviews of the restaurants that we went to, of the train stations, pretty much every place that we hit I did a review. So if you were curious about that, you can always check me out on Google Maps under Creating with Jovi. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed our trip to Charleston, South Carolina. Thanks for watching. See you soon.